powerful play goes on and you may contribute a verse. What will your verse be?
I have a really great memory of a long time ago during private lessons when I would walk into the lesson studio and my students would be sitting there noodling on their instruments. Some of them were playing riffs and songs from other people, but other students were actually just playing things that sounded really interesting I've never heard of before. So I'd ask them, what are you playing? You know, that's kind of cool. And they'd be like, I don't know, I'm just kind of noodling around. I made this up last night and just kind of riffing on it a little bit. And it always made me excited whenever my students were actually coming up with things on their own. But sadly, in time, that began to diminish quite a bit. I remember noticing that one time. I was like, how come you guys are never noodling anymore? You know, you're not really making up your own stuff as much. And they never really seemed to have a good reason why. And the last nail in the coffin was when I would walk in and they would actually just be on their phone and their guitar would be sitting on the floor next to them. I remember that period of time quite well because it was around the time when I noticed that movies were getting kind of generic. It just didn't seem like anything exciting was coming out. And then I also noticed that there were a lot of movies that were just remakes of old movies. And I started to wonder, like, what is happening? You know, it seems like I'm seeing the death of creativity. First in my students and the people that were around me at the time, and then the bigger picture. I noticed it in media everywhere. So I noticed it in movies. I started noticing it in the music business as well. It just seemed like music was getting less interesting. Instead of listening to it and being like, that's a really great song and remembering it, it would just sort of disappear in my mind. It would just become sort of like background music. And I did another video on this already where I compared my students from the 90s to today. And it just seemed like they started to not even know who was singing the songs. And I'd be like, okay, you want to learn this song? Who does it? And they would have no idea. They'd have to look it up on their phones. And that's when I started wondering what was going on, because it seemed like as technology was getting better and better, creativity was falling at almost an equal rate. It was very disturbing. I wondered how my students who were so creative back in the day and they were dreaming of being on stage and writing songs and collaborating, how were they suddenly reduced to just being witnesses and consumers of other people's art? So I contemplated it. I thought about when I was a kid, how in kindergarten we'd have to sit in a circle and we'd still sing songs and we would color and we'd do all sorts of creative things. And then around first grade, that all changed. It really seemed like they were starting to put numbers into our heads, filling us up with all these rules, all these things to memorize. And the next thing you know, it seemed like our hearts or our souls were starting to harden. This was illustrated really well in this comic that I saw the other day. Very sad, but very true as well. And then as I got older, you know, I was lucky enough to join orchestra and I started to be able to be a little more expressive. But even there, I wasn't being creative. I was just playing other people's music. And then I was even more lucky because I ended up starting to play guitar and drums, but that was something I was very fortunate to grab onto because I know nowadays every time there's a shortage of money, which there always seems to be in schools, the first thing that seems to go are the arts. There always seems to be money for other things, you know, sports related mostly, but when it comes to arts related things, it really seems like that's the first thing on the chopping block. And that makes me really sad because when kids aren't exposed to that side of themselves, it almost seems like it becomes a foreign thing to them and the door seems to shut on them. And you wonder why there are a lot of kids that feel desperate or feeling depressed, are diagnosed with something, ADHD. I just wonder if it's that creative energy wanting to explode out of them. And they become so disconnected, in fact, that I've had a few students even just ask me straight out. They're like, Mike, what's the benefit of even being creative? Seems like in this world, there's really no benefit to it. And so I wrote out this list of benefits that I've experienced in my life, and I want to share that with you guys as well as my students. So one big thing I have to remind people is that the one thing we seem to have over technology as far as AI goes in the future is that we are able to be creative. I know they have AI created art now. They have, you know, music and drawings and paintings and all that kind of stuff, but there's still a divide between what AI are doing and what humans are capable of doing. And I think that's the one thing, possibly the last thing that we're going to have over AI. So I want to enhance that side of ourselves rather than lose that side and have nothing to offer the world. You know, if all you could do is put things together, something a robot could do, it's easy to be taken advantage of as far as just being a cog in the machine or easily being replaced, so you become disposable. There's a feeling you get while you're creating that's really hard to describe if you haven't really felt it to its fullest extent, and that is the flow state. And whenever I'm in that state, I feel the most alive. There are weeks where I don't create as much and I feel almost like I'm slowly dying. And it gets to the point where I'm just trying to get through the day. You know, I think about what's my next thing to do. I'm going to go eat, then I'm going to watch this movie, then I'm going to go to bed. You know, it just seems really mechanical. But when I'm in that flow state, it's like nothing else matters. So my whole world becomes about whatever I'm working on. And it's exciting and thrilling. And when you're in the actual flow state, time just disappears and you're lost in it. That's why people who feel this feeling get so addicted to it. That's all they want to do. Even a guy like Walter White.
I was alive.
Like the Dead Poets Society quote said, the powerful play goes on and you get to contribute a verse. There's something about the feeling of contribution in this life that if you don't have that side of yourself to tap into, you only feel half fulfilled. There are a list of 6 human needs that Tony Robbins brought up a long time ago. And I remember reading that and thinking, okay, do the things I do tap into these 6 human needs? And being creative is one of those things that taps into all 6 of them. Once you feel that feeling of contribution and giving back, it's one of those things where like, okay, this is my mark on the world, and you feel very fulfilled because you feel like you've added something, some value to this place. The first time I wrote a complete song with lyrics and music and everything, I just remember looking at the page and going, where did that come from? I can't believe I was able to get that out into this world. It's very strange. So it forced me to go deeper and deeper inside when I'm writing lyrics, when I'm writing melodies, and it's kind of a fascinating journey to go within. You know how it always seems like every day we're reaching out, we're trying to do things out here, we're trying to complete tasks and all that. But when you're being creative, you're actually going the other way, it seems like, and you're going deeper and deeper. And it's a fascinating journey into your own psyche and into your own soul, if you want to think of it that way, and to see what's actually there. It's very therapeutic. If you feel like you're really high strung and maybe you're always nervous or you're always thinking too much or whatever, I wonder if that's just energy that wants to come out. Not only are you going deeper within and learning more about yourself, but you're able to get it out in a way that makes you feel better. So it's a win-win situation. When I talked about the flow state, when you're in that state, you don't have an opportunity to be anxious, nervous, anything like that. You're just there, you're present. And the therapy of that is that you realize what it feels like to be present. And then you could take that outside into the outside world and still remain calm and at ease because you don't have all that nervous built up energy. You were able to let it out. And to me, that's one of the best therapies there is. Let's just take somebody in the tech world, somebody who's developing apps. Some of the most successful people I know rely on creativity to be able to get to their next invention, to their next idea. And especially nowadays, if you're young and your parents are like, hey, you're not doing anything that's going to make you money in the future, it's easy now to point to like YouTube and TikTok and, Twitch and say, hey, look, these people are making a lot of money. Some kids are making more than their parents now. When I was younger and I was writing a lot, what I didn't realize is that once that was done and the band was playing what we were writing, suddenly we'd be connecting with people in a whole different way. So not only were people coming out just to hear music, they'd be like, oh, I really love that solo you do in that song. Or they would talk to my singer and be like, those lyrics really connected with me. And even today, I have subscribers that are like 13, the age I was when I wrote these songs, and they're telling me that they're inspired by my solos that I wrote way back then. So it's so crazy that even after all these years, I'm still connecting with people through things that I created way back in the day. There's that old quote about most people living lives of quiet desperation. I think a big part of that is that a lot of people aren't able to express themselves. There's some times where I can't. It's the worst feeling. I can't wait to come back to my studio and to let it out. Sometimes I'll just crank up my amp and rock out, and afterwards I'll feel better, or I'll write a song, or I'll do a video. If you don't have that ability to express yourself, it's really easy to feel trapped. This also occurred to me recently. Being creative makes you more interesting as a person and a musician or whatever you're into. I'm not saying people that aren't creative are dull and I don't want to hang out with them or anything like that, but I just noticed the other day that, the people that I could sit and talk to for hours all seem to be people that love to create as well. I think that has to do with tapping into the other side of the mind, and you still have access to that even during your day-to-day activities. Okay, these are the books and audiobooks that I've listened to that really get me pumped for being creative again. The first one is by Brenda Euland. It's called If You Want to Write. And I really recommend the audiobook. There's one where there's this lady reading it. I don't think it's Brenda. I think she's since passed, but it's so inspiring. It's like this older lady. Her voice is gravelly and cool, and she talks about her experiences as a creative writing teacher. And she really makes you feel like anything's possible. So every time I need like a boost, I listen to that first, and it seems to carry me over for a long time. Another great book is called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. This one has gotten a lot of attention in the last couple years, and it's helped a lot of people. That's the one that talked about the muse and how to get it back for yourself. It also talks about the reasons why we don't write, and he calls it resistance. And there's a lot of resistance that happens that we might not even be aware of, whether we're afraid to fail or get ridiculed or whatever. He talks about resistance quite a bit. Here's a classic, Stephen King's book on writing. Just everyone I know who's creative has read that book and seems to love it. And the last book is actually an audiobook I just started listening to. It's so new to me that I barely remember the title. I think it's called How to Write One Song, which is a genius title for a creative book because it already takes the pressure off. It's like, okay, well, one song doesn't sound so bad. I'm sure anybody could write one song. But he really guides you through the steps, and a lot of things I talked about today, plus a lot more, because he's an accomplished songwriter, and you could really get the ins and outs of how he does things. And a bonus in the audiobook is he'll just kick into a song and make things up on the spot, proving that he's in that flow state, that he's in the zone. So that's cool to hear as well. All right, everyone, I feel like this is one of the most important videos I ever made because seeing creativity die is killing me. I feel like the souls of us humans are slowly dying. And after that goes away, what's left? What's left to do around here, So I want to rekindle the creative spirit through this video and through future endeavors. I have a lot of big plans, and I hope this reaches you guys and inspires you to want to start to create on your own. I know I do a lot of videos where we copy a lot of other artists' licks, but if you notice, usually at the end of the video, I always say, I'm teaching you these licks so that you can implement them into your own style, into your own playing. Do your own thing and contribute a verse to this powerful play, as they say in Dead Poet Society. All right, everyone, thanks for watching. We'll catch you at the next video. Bye-bye.